Death came as a surprise to me in residency. Nothing really prepares you for it, but then at the same time, you get used to it very quickly. But every death kind of weighs on you a little bit more because of your patients, and they're depending on you. And I think it got to a point in residency where I was just surrounded by death so much, and that was during my ICU rotations. It's hard not only because of the patients that you get to know, but just as important, it's their entire family that you get to know. You know, you get to see that patient's daughter. You get to a point where you start seeing it so much, you start becoming numb to it. You know, there's a few times that I caught myself where on my ICU rotations, there was a code blue, we'd be run into that patient's room. And yeah, it's a whole team effort. I would be doing CPR and we'd call it. And I would feel like there's a sense of relief. And it's not because I, want patients to die or anything. It's just on the caring side of things, on the physician side of things, there are so many aspects of the patient's quality of life that you have to take into consideration. You know the limitations of what our technology can do. Sure, we could restart a heartbeat, but what does that mean in the long run? What does that mean for quality of life? Or what kind of meaningful life will this patient carry on after this? At a certain point, it gets to a place where we're just prolonging the suffering. That's where I feel like sometimes we could do more harm than actually help. Everything that I'm talking about is very situational. You know, there are certain cases where none of this applies, but there are a lot of cases where a lot of this applies. But there have been times that I caught myself stopping CPR, looking at the patient, and looking at another dead body and not feeling anything. But after thinking it through, it's just another one of those things that are part of the job. I imagine if you were to take every single loss personally, you wouldn't be able to function as a doctor. You wouldn't be able to provide that same level of care to every single patient that you see in the long run. Probably would lead to a severe form of burnout that I wouldn't know how to get out of. And maybe that's why, no matter how much you like or love your patients, or that bond that you do create with your patients, you always kind of keep them at like arm's reach. Never get too connected. You could connect, but don't get connected. You know? I think it's necessary. There's a lot of things you could learn from death. I think even knowing the signs of when a patient is looking critically ill is important to know as a doctor. Nobody teaches you that. That's not something you could read in a book. You have to see it. You have to experience it. That intuition that you develop that you can only gain with pure experience. But death is something that you have to get used to, and you have to learn from it and respect it. And you do anything in your power to avoid it. I've been the one to close my patient's eyes at the end of the day. Sometimes I feel like a failure. Sometimes I feel like it was that person's time. And I've become okay with that. But the important thing to remember, no matter how hardened or calloused you get, that you still care at the end of the day. There's a difference between being calloused and being completely shut off from the world. No matter how numb you actually become to it, when it's your time to be the doctor, it doesn't mean that you care any less. It doesn't mean that you're trying less or not doing everything that is in your power to make sure it doesn't happen. It just means that you're human and you're doing whatever you can in order to cope with the realities of this job.